We'll call the meeting. We've got Peggy Briggs,
Chris Reynolds.
Dee Ortner.
John Duncan.
Lindsay Liss.
and online,
Kathy Kukalo.
Brian Taylor here.
Lois Wassoff.
Ray.
Ray, you're muted.
He's just not talking. Okay. Ray is here.
Peggy, is there any way that the conference room panel can be? There we go. Okay. Yeah, now I can see you all.
Okay, well, so the combo meetings, if you come to the conference room, you can see each other. But when you're in the conference room, you're a little less visible than the folks online. So for those folks watching at home, it's actually easier to, the folks online are more visible than the people in the room. So it's a little backwards, but anyway. Okay, the meeting is called to order. I think we have a quorum. So let's dive right into the agenda. 1, call to order, check. 2, review preliminary 5-year budget projections. And I'm going to lean over to Bob, to our staff lead, to, we have another member here.
Hi, John Garofalo.
John Croppola, one of our new members. Welcome, John.
I'm late, everyone.
Thanks.
Peggy,
Thanks
you need
for-
to appoint a scribe for the meeting.
Yes, who would like to be a
Somebody's taking
scribe?
notes.
Oh, we have, Lindsay has volunteered. Lindsay and John are our new members, and so Lindsay has volunteered. Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks for reminding me for that. John, thank you for coming. This is your first in-person meeting,
It is.
I believe. Welcome. Welcome to our committee and to the select board room, which is one of my favorite rooms in town. One more member has arrived. You can announce yourself and take that, or one of the microphones. John, you should grab that microphone. Everyone, microphones are just for folks in the room. Microphones aren't here for amplification. They're here so that people watching can hear you. When we go to the big room, sometimes you have to do both. But in this room, it really more for folks to be able to hear you. And I see Terry Ackerman, one of our other select board members, has joined us, which is great. Thanks, Terry. And Mary Hartman, select board member. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. I don't know, Bob, what we really have to report. We put the 5-year budget projections on the agenda. I'm not sure that we have that much to report, but let you tell me.
Parashar came down and met with the schools and myself during the week. And his conclusion was you have too much detail. So what he thought you wanted tonight was a very, very high level, 40,000 feet or more flavor of kind of what the challenges are and what the operating budgets might look like.
Any surprises?
And certainly in September, we don't know yet. Neither side really
Right.
knows. But he said that's okay. Just give the committee a flavor. And then when you come back in October, we're looking for more details. So both the superintendent and the town manager have that sort of presentation, a few slides each to get you going.
Are we up first?
I'm sorry, did you say you had slides? Are you presenting slides or are those coming? All
Presentations.
right.
I have them here. Let me start?
So we'll start with the schools.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. There's a lot of new faces, so I'll do the formal introduction of myself, Lori Hunter, Superintendent of Schools. We're glad to be back. I come with our new Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, so I want to start with an introduction to Bob. Bob Conry started in July, so we'll stress July wasn't very long ago, so he's working really hard to learn where we are and just barely starting to get a sense where we might be going for the coming budget, never mind 5 years. But we did want to bring you some high-level numbers to get a sense of where we are. Like, we just opened school, so to project next year when we're still getting stable for this year is always a challenge, but we do have some early thoughts, which may have some changing to them by October. Our budget timeline will be with the school committee to deliver them a budget December 6th. So we'll keep talking with you about how to work through that and bringing you these projections in the meantime so that we all can work collaboratively. So I'm going to turn over to Bob and let him talk you through the slides.
Good evening. So I will walk through, again, we're early in the year, but we do have a sense of a few things, and we'll kind of highlight this as we go through. We'll say too that we have a little bit more information about FY24, a lot closer to us than FY28. So I will start with a high-level view of our total CPS 5-year projections. And so what we have here is a 5-year projection looking at our total expenditures, and something we talked about with Parashar was looking at the funding sources. Not all of our expenditures come from the general fund. They come from grants, revolving, circuit breaker. I think you're all aware we have a lot of stimulus funding through grants. Both the town does and the school does. On our side is through ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, the primary grants. And so as we look out a few years, we're aware that, we've been thoughtful about how we're using the grants, but there is some funding that serves as kind of a relief valve if we do have some cost pressures in the year that start to diminish as we go forward. The revolving and circuit breaker projections, the revolving is based on local receipts. You don't anticipate many changes there. And circuit breaker varies depending on our costs. So if we do see changes in special ed costs, circuit breaker lags that. There is some kind of connection between those two. If we do have unexpected costs, there's a link in the relief we'd get. But so I guess I just, at a high level, wanted to, at the top line, you can see the increase in our total expenditures by year, 4.4% in FY24. And looking at just the general fund impact, it would be 4.6. And as you move out, it diminishes. A little bit more detail on the next slide.
Bob, it might be useful to just describe to people when you say fiscal year 24, that's from June.
July
to-
1, 2023 through June 30, 2024.
Right. Thank you.
So good clarification.
Too far there.
Yeah. Skipped over one on you.
So these are the same categories we looked at last year. It's more of a expense type projection. In our own budgets, we often look at more functional, and this is a little bit more on the expense type. So these are the main buckets. There's a couple things that I just highlight, and we'll come back and talk through this in more detail in our next presentation. But the two items I want to highlight, kind of the key drivers in FY24, are the contract services and the out-of-district tuitions. They're both linked to special education. Since we budgeted last year, my understanding and talking to Dr. Hunter, we did take some risk on in order to arrive at a number that we could get passed. Some things have changed since then. We've had some placements that have occurred. You know, we're setting this budget in the fall. Students can go out of district. And so that's kind of driving the increase that you see of 15%. That can potentially change up or down. Students move in and out of district. They change placements, but that's the most variable cost that we do have. A lot of our other costs are a little bit more consistent. And the contract services ties into that. That's the transportation piece, to pay for the transportation to an out of district placement. In FY26, there's been discussion too about, there's an expectation of $500,000 coming out of our budget, and we've have placeholders in. We've had some preliminary discussions about this. We'll talk more in our own planning on where that comes from, but we would view a chunk of it coming from the non-teacher salary. So you can see that's at 0.6% in FY26, and the other expenses is where the other pocket is. So that's where the 500,000 in expected savings when we consolidate to a single middle school is housed right now.
That's I'm sorry, the savings from a single middle school is, if you back up one slide.
One more.
One more.
I guess this thing has a quick trigger here. Sorry. So
That's
it's in
the minus 5.6?
That's part of it, and the other expenses, you can see it goes down a little bit. I mean, there's some, you know,
Okay.
and then up above in the non-teacher salaries.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you.
So at the regional level, again, we have a view here of total expenditures by year, and outline the funding sources. Again, the grant funding kind of ramps up and then drops off in FY26 as ESSER sunsets. We project an increase of 2.8 in FY24, and you can see the trend there for the future years. And then what we've done in addition is projected the Chapter 70, the state funding that we get that offsets the general fund and leads to the town assessments. And you can see the figures there. We're projecting fairly level trends there. We don't have anything to tell us otherwise at this point. With the Student Opportunity Act, there is the possibility of some changes, but we can't bank on that. So the assessments to the town there, I'm sure you're more interested in the Concord numbers, so I'll skip to the next slide. And so one of the things I think you heard in previous years is about the shift in relative share of students between the two towns at the high school. And in FY23, it basically drops about 1% from FY23 to 24. So on the 2.7% increase we showed on the previous slide, as a result of the shift in the student population, the actual assessment increase to Concord is 1.6%. It's projected to be 7.1% to Carlisle. And then as you go out, you can see in 25 that trend continues. And then in future years, I've leveled the assumption. I don't want to project 26, 27, 28 too much variation until we get kind of some new numbers. So we'll update that as we go. But certainly the trend the next couple of years that we're seeing is a shift towards Carlisle paying a larger share of the budget than it has in the past, and Concord paying a slightly less share. So that's something that just wanted to point out, and I don't anticipate that's based on, for FY24 is based on the start of school year numbers. The projection that you saw last year was actually only off by 0.02%. So we looked at, last time we looked at kind of existing student counts and rolled out the 12th grade and rolled in the 8th grade. So I think we're fairly comfortable between now and October. You're not going to see significant changes there.
And Dr. Hunter, you had, you've sort of signaled that already to Carlisle.
We
They're
certainly
aware.
have,
Yeah.
and we actually met with them briefly this morning, and they're very aware and
Yeah.
started to try to make some plans even last year, so.
And these numbers aren't going to exceed their Prop 2.5 operating.
I can't speak to that. I think they've been working really hard to be sure it doesn't, but we're having different conversations this year in Carlisle. Yeah.
Their high-level point was that they've taken steps to prepare for this. So
Pardon me?
they've taken steps to prepare for this.
Yeah.
Bob, I have a couple questions, and they're just kind of general questions. What are your biggest, one of them is, what is your biggest concern this year in terms of staying within the budget?
Well, I feel like our focus is going to be on the Concord Public Schools budget and how to support the needs of all of our students, and particularly, well, a piece of it would be special ed, but there's a lot of needs, and to be able to also preserve some funds from ESSER to carry in, so we're not going into FY24 using up that to kind of address our needs.
And how about expenses in terms of operating expenses, building, maintenance, et cetera?
I mean, I think we're okay budget-wise.
Okay.
There's no surprises there at this point.
Okay.
Knock on wood. I mean, but we've planned for preventative maintenance. We've planned for some repairs. We also have the 100,000 in capital that's for Sanborn and Peabody. So, you know, again, unless something unexpected happens, the maintenance and operations side, I think we're in okay shape on it. It's more on supporting students with the needs that they have.
Okay.
And headcount is pretty flat at this point? you
Yeah, we're
project?
very level. We've been watching it carefully. It's holding. We're down some in the elementaries from what we've been overall, but nothing we were surprised by, and no dramatic decline from last year. So we knew there'd be some decline, and now it seems to be leveling out, which is really what the projections had shown us all along.
Decline in enrollment.
Yeah, the elementary schools are all within 400 to 430, and a few years ago we were 450 to 480. So, but we expected that. We've been counting on that relief at the middle and high schools as the kids age up. So the projections are holding really solidly.
And so, here we are, it's September. We don't really have a lot to do still. So the next steps, this is just kind of a look at,
We haven't started yet. is
Yeah.
really the answer, right?
so in my previous district, this is when I published the budget calendar. But anyway, we'll look at refining the data that we have here tonight, particularly some of the years out further. I felt like for tonight, the focus, I needed to spend more time on FY24. So we'll look at refining the data. We'll also look at the funding sources, see if we get any new information. And then we have October 1, which is that's the date that we use student counts to determine the regional allocation. So we'll have those numbers then and basically know what the split of the budget will be. And, we anticipate it'll be similar to what we presented tonight. And then we have these presentations. The 13th will be coming back here, preview our presentation with the school committee a couple nights before then. Our first presentation to our regional and Concord Public School committees on December 6th. And then we have our budget hearing on the 13th. So those are kind of the next slate of key dates. And I know we have some capital budget discussions as well ongoing. This is kind of the operation budget pieces.
And the closeout of fiscal 22, any surprises in there? Anything?
Couple little things we're still finishing here, but nothing major. No.
Okay.
So that was good.
Well, no surprises.
Yeah, I mean, I think you heard a couple of the places we're watching carefully. We did take risks to get to guideline in the spring. Enrollments being one, we had thought we could cut one more elementary class, and enrollment, the projections held, and we had to put one back that wasn't budgeted. Special education, we are keeping dozens and dozens of kids in district, but it only takes one or two that are unplanned or different needs than what our programs offer, or all sorts of different variables. So that's what you're seeing. We are still keeping dozens of kids in district, and that's really soaring. So hopefully I can continue to tell you those great stories. And we're just watching some of how the rest of it's playing out. There's a lot of odd things happening right now, like case transportation for our sped vans, they can't get drivers. So when they can't get drivers, sometimes the way that we save money by using them first, because we're members, we can't always book with them, and we're suddenly out to some very expensive vendor because the way we do it, in a scaled way through case is not available right this minute. So there's unusual, unexpected things happening too.
Along that line, do you still have any of the ARPA money or whatever money you got for COVID? Do you still have some of that?
Yeah, that's the ESSER money Bob's
Yeah, the
referencing. Ours
ESSER,
is called
yeah,
ESSER, yours is
right.
ARPA. We've had 3 rounds of that. We've spent the smallest ones last year. ESSER 2 is the one he's mentioning now. There's a little bit left in that. The big one was ESSER 3.
Yeah.
And so we've scaled out how to use that across the 3 years it's available. And so we're using a portion of it, and the goal is to not use beyond what we budgeted, but to stay within that plan that we had so that it lasts us the whole 3 years.
Is it possible, I'm not trying to solve your problems, but I'm just wondering, can you use ESSER funds for transportation?
We probably could, but given that we have other things allocated and
other-
planned for them, and that's kind of the juggling act Bob's doing right now, is where do we find other unexpected costs? And we're just opening school, so we're still figuring out getting, synced up perfectly on the staffing costs and all of that. So
Can you use E&D money?
that's more
CPS.
Is
complicated.
it? Okay. I don't-
Not at CPS.
Yeah.
And
Not at
that's where-
CPS.
yeah,
That's only for the high school.
Oh, all right.
But even at the high school, it's not as simple as saying we have the money, we need to use it. You'd actually have to change revenues and such, but at CBS, that's not applicable.
Any other questions from the committee?
Let me see who's online, if they have any
Anyone
hands
yeah,
up or whatever.
anyone online with their
Can you-
hand
can
up?
you stop sharing so we
Yeah,
can
I
just
was,
see
we're getting
them?
ready for that to, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay,
Is there anybody with their hand up?
Is that a hand?
I don't see one.
Oh, no, that's just the curtain. That's
Okay.
Okay. Well, we will, thank you so much for coming in.
Good
I know
luck.
Very busy schedule.
I'm going to stick around and talk to you about the middle school in a few
Yes,
minutes.
I know.
I'm
I
not
know,
leaving
well,
yet.
I can say that we're all very happy to hear the phrase, no surprises,
Yeah.
on the operational side for both the high school and the CPS, which in this day and age is great.
Yeah.
And that's excellent, and probably due to your excellent management of
Thanks.
the budget. So we also were going to talk about the 5-year budget projections for the town.
Thank you.
Carrie? You can shorten this by just saying no surprises.
All right.
Okay, she laughed. That's a bad sign.
No.
That didn't
I-
sound
I
like a
hope-
no surprise.
No,
chuckle.
I hope there are no surprises. So, good evening. I haven't met all of you. So I'm Carrie LaFleur. I'm the town manager, and I know you've met Bob before. I'm not sure if you've met Gail. Gail Dowd is the new finance director. And you may know that she and Bob had been sharing the finance director position over the last several months. Bob is still here supporting us at least through this budget. Because of the timing, it's very difficult for Gail to walk in September and pick up the budget. So we're grateful that Bob is still here with us. So Bob said 40,000 feet. I'd like to say maybe 100,000 feet is where we're flying right now. We changed up the review timetable last year when we went through the process. And when we put our budget calendar together, we had that in mind. And this part of the presentation we actually made in October last year. And so we did put something together for you. I think there are some there are just a few key points that I'd like to make. I think the first is just for the newer members. When you look at the town budget warrant article, it includes both what you refer to as guidelines and non-guidelines. And so what I have here is our projections to the town's budget article. And again, the non-guidelines portion is included, and those are fixed costs. So they're employee benefits costs both for the town and for CPS and all of the debt service. And so that's included here. Let's see. Oh, good, you can't see that. All right.
So to summarize, Carrie, they're non-guideline, we're establishing a guideline to help our town departments, yourself and the schools establish their budgets. The non-guideline part of the budget are things that we can't control.
Well, there's certainly less control. They really are reflective of decisions that have been made by town meetings past in terms of debt service, and then employee benefits costs, which are, a result of lots of different decisions that are made either through union negotiations or decisions that are made outside of this group. So you do take those into account. If you look at this very busy slide here, let's see if I, you can see my pointer here. So where we are at this point, again, 100,000 feet, so not much detail at all. We've just issued budget packets and instructions to our departments. Those won't come back for another 2 to 3 weeks or so. But just based on this very cursory review, we're looking at the town budget warrant article at 4.91%. Now, I understand as we go through the process, we don't expect 4.91%. But if you look at just the guidelines portion down here, 5.22%. And again, don't expect that. What we have
So
going.
This is the math, so that you're using the same approach that we used last year, Carrie, where you're using some, I don't know if they're BLS or some numbers on projections of inflation against certain of the categories. Is that the process you went through?
But the bigger expenses in the guidelines really are personnel costs, and that's really what I wanted to highlight today. So we are having significant issues hiring staff. We have had an older workforce going into the pandemic, had several years prior to the pandemic where we had a lot of retirements. It was much easier before the pandemic to replace, to find qualified candidates. I'm not sure where all of the workers went as a result of the pandemic, but we have very shallow applicant pools and are either having to advertise positions multiple times, or we get through the process with a candidate and we can't meet their expectations in terms of salaries and benefits.
Are you using recruiters?
We have in targeted positions. We don't typically use recruiters, but we have, and we may end up doing more of that. We've had pretty good luck. Our library director, that recruitment was handled by a recruiter, and we got an excellent candidate there. So we may do that.
How many
more.
positions are open?
You know what, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. We are tracking that much more closely than we had in the past, but we have many key positions that are open. The deputy town manager position is vacant, sustainability director vacant. Our police chief just announced his retirement, so that position will be vacant. And just filled the CFO position. So a lot of key vacancies, but a lot of vacancies across departments that make it very difficult to get the work that we used to do before the pandemic done in a timely manner. So that's an issue. We do have a class and comp plan review that is underway. For those of you who were here last year, you remember we talked to you about that a year ago. I think there was some discussion about whether or not the amount we had budgeted was appropriate or going to be enough. It was enough. We are working with a very reputable company that does this work across the country, but has significant experience in Massachusetts. So we were very happy to be partnering with this company. GovHR is the vendor that we are working with. And I believe we expect to have a significant portion of the work done by the end of the calendar year. It's a little late for the budget process, but we do expect that we will be implementing recommendations that are made. So,
Carrie, what's the scope of that study? You're looking at salary levels for different job positions, or I'm not sure what.
sure. So we have not done a full review of our class and comp plan since 2007. So they are going to, we have selected 50 benchmark positions. So these are positions that you would commonly find in other municipalities to use as benchmarks. And we have 16 to 20 comparable communities that we're looking at. We've had a lot of discussion at the personnel board. That's the board in town that is working with our human resources department on this particular project. So again, that is underway. I think
I have one other question
Sure.
on this. And from my working knowledge of the town, it seems like most departments have, I guess, sort of a growth pattern where there's, a senior leader, there's sort of logical successors.
Mhm.
Do you feel that is the case, or is that what the consultant's going to advise us on, or?
So I would say it's department by department. You're talking about a succession plan. I think some departments, they're more aligned to have successors in-house than other departments.
Okay. Because that would make a big difference in the recruiting expense, or recruiting situation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So Carrie, the work that they were going to be doing is looking at comp and benefits, right? Because benefits was one of the other questions that we had.
Yeah, so their focus really is on compensation. They will be doing some work in the benefits arena, but not to the same level as the compensation piece.
And based on what you're seeing so far, you don't expect to have significant changes in the P&L as a result of this? Is that what you're?
No, I do.
You do,
And
okay.
one of the reasons why, when I showed you in fiscal '24, our overall increase 5.22% is because we're carrying a much bigger number in estimated increases in personnel costs for existing positions. Now, I'm not sure that will pan out, but if you've been following any of the work of the Personnel Study Task Force, they've had significant conversations about employee salaries, and that is an issue that they have highlighted. And we just don't know, because we have not done this on a full scale since 2007. We look at a handful of positions every year. We're looking at positions as they become vacant, and we think we're remaining competitive, and we're not. And we are having people looking for salaries that are not even within the range and we can't go above those ranges. Those are approved by town meeting.
Well, it's far more cost effective to retain staff than to hire staff. And you had a question?
Yeah, so the vacancies, how is that driving cost in the short term? Shouldn't that be a savings? Or are you talking about the costs related to recruiting and overtime?
Well, the assumption is the positions are filled. That's what this budget assumption is. But yes, the last several years we have had savings, and that's how we've been able to carry forward prior year savings to fill the gap, to to keep the property tax increase lower. So, but this assumption assumes that there's 100%. Yeah.
Good question. Thank you. Any other?
So I just wanted to mention a few other things on sort of the drivers for the budget. One of the issues is our, what I will call our tier 1 capital. So our tier 1 capital are items that are, we don't have a hard and fast dollar, but typically $500,000 would be the top. Any capital that is up to $500,000 is part of our tier 1 capital, and that's actually within the operating budget. So sometimes it's referred to as operating capital. It's not really, for people, it's not really capital. But it has always been budgeted as tier 1 capital. So we have a financial policy that says that 2 to 3% of our spending should be dedicated to this tier 1 capital. To give you some examples, this is everything from computers, vehicles, even the heavy equipment at Public Works, but not fire trucks. So the fire trucks are too much, but even the very large equipment that you see at Public Works would be in this category. So 2 to 3% of spending, and we have struggled the last couple of years to budget at 2%. And what has happened is that some of the large equipment at Public Works that is in the $200,000 to $300,000 range, we've actually bumped into the tier 2 capital, which is funded through the issuance of debt. And we don't want to do that. We'd like to get that back into tier 1. In order to do that, we really would need to be anticipating or assuming 3% versus 2%. So we're trying to, that is included in that 5.22% that we would bump that up. And then in the non-guideline section, the tier 2 capital, and this would be typically anything between.
Sorry, you jumped over the utility cost.
Right. So I don't have any hard numbers here, but obviously we are impacted by increased utility costs like everybody else is. So we're still analyzing that.
Yeah, that could be a big number. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just for people on TV that can't read this.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Because I've got the big screen behind me.
Oh, that's true. It's true. I'm looking right at my screen and it's.
Oh, you have one over there.
Hey, Carrie, I have a question about the tier 1 capital proposed 2% to 3%. Is that increase a reflection of costs just going up, or is that something else? Because when you had mentioned sort of the heavier equipment, not the printer paper or the printers, but the heavier equipment maybe coming to the end of its life and you're having to renew or update that, the cost of that's all going up. So I'm just trying to understand, is this episodic in the case of where we are with, the market cycle inflation, or is that something else? I'm just trying to, can you unpack that a little bit, please?
Sure. So if I'm understanding you correctly, we've been deferring, and we need to dedicate more of our budget to replacement of this type of capital so that we're not deferring, we're not incurring additional maintenance costs or not able to do the work that we need to do because we don't have vehicles and equipment available.
Okay, so
So
these have just piled up now, and we're sort of at a place where we need to attend to this.
yes, right.
Okay.
Yeah. So then turning to look at the tier 2 capital, and again, these are items that are between 500,000 and we say 5 million, but we really couldn't accommodate up to 5 million in this category. But that's how it's defined. Funded through the issuance of debt. The biggest component here is the funds, the money that is dedicated to the maintenance of roads, bridges, sidewalks, drainage. And for anybody who's been following the work of the Public Works Commission, and we raised this issue last year, we have been, say on an average, we dedicate about $2 million of our total capital plan, which is about 5 million, to roads, bridges, sidewalks. And the need is more like 6 million, is that? And so we have to figure out, what are we going to do with that? Because 6 million exceeds what the whole tier 2 spending, which also includes building maintenance, renovations, if we do land purchases, that type of thing, some of the park development. So that's something that we're trying to figure out how we're going to deal with that. And so I'm just mentioning that we have not assumed in this forecast that we're going to increase that tier 2 budget from 5 million to 10 million. That's something we have to figure out.
Carrie, does that category then include the expenses associated with the parks that we've have come to vote this past year? Additional projects that come up on a one-off basis, and we, as a town, decide to proceed with, the cost ultimately lands in the tier 2 capital?
They would, if the proposed project is less than 5 million, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
And then the other item here is employee benefits costs. And so we have just the standard, how much is health insurance going to cost a year from now, trying to figure that out, to trying to understand if we need to make changes in the cost of health insurance, the employer share. And that's something that is raised year in and year out here in Concord, because the employer share is lower than what you would typically see in what a municipality offers. We're really waiting to see the class and comp, because we need to develop a compensation strategy. And so we need to understand where we're expecting salaries to be relative to market before we can make any decisions about, do we need to look at additional adjustments in health insurance, or whether or not we need to offer different types of benefits.
What's our share? 2/3, 1/3,
So
half and half?
we offer 2 types of plans. We have high deductible plans, and we do have a high deductible plan where the employer share is 70%. We have 3 different high deductible plans, but through one vendor, and it's actually Blue Cross. So this is the first time we're offering Blue Cross. And then we have our benchmark plans, low deductible plans, if you will. Those are, the best one is a 65% share. In municipalities, it's more, I would say 75% is more what you would see.
For the employer.
For the employer.
You had a question?
Yeah, do you have a sense of, ballpark sense of how many employees take the high deductible option?
So on the town side, we are probably around 25 to 30%. We've really marketed them and trying to get people to understand that in almost all cases, a high deductible plan works just as well, if not better, than the low deductible plan. On the school side, the participation is a little bit lower, but it's significantly, there's been a significant improvement on both sides with the high deductible plan. And as we get, I think this is the 3rd year that we've offered that. And this year when we did our meetings, we had employee testimonials. So it wasn't just management representatives talking about what a great deal it was. We had some employees that shared their experience. So that was really helpful.
Carrie, I have a question on the class and comp, which is in this investigation that's going on about your comps and with 50 other positions or 50 positions in X number of towns. I'm wondering, do you also look at part-time? Do you look at just full-time? Do you look at flex schedules? Do you look, how is it approached? Because people now are, they want to work at home, or they only want to go in the office a couple of days, or maybe services have to be cut. How are you looking at that?
So we are looking at flex schedules, remote work in ways that we never looked at before, not as part of the class and comp study, but just we're also reviewing our personnel bylaw and our personnel policies and procedures. And it's really in that context that we're looking at those types of things.
As prices are going up, or salaries are going up, maybe faster than we'd like, how can you, or have you been thinking about maybe flexible hours or part-time, and how would that impact some of the services that are delivered? Are you looking at that at all, or not at this time?
No, we're absolutely looking at it. It's very difficult in a municipal setting. And, we have all different, on the town side, it's almost like we have a dozen different businesses that we operate and business models, and it's complicated, but we are looking at it. We know employees want that, and we're trying to balance how that fits in our environment. I did want to I know you only asked for the first. Did you ask for 5 years or 10 years? We got 10. We got 10 years.
Yeah. That's great.
There's just a few things that I wanted to point out here in the 10-year, and I think we talked about it a little bit last year, and it's really for you to note. And there, in terms of our debt service, we know we have the middle school coming on, but we do have the elementary schools that debt is fully satisfied beginning in 27, and we have that. We've talked about that extensively because we've used that to finance the middle school, or understand how we're going to finance the middle school. Also in this next 5-year period, we do expect our retirement unfunded liability to be fully funded. And that's here in, you can see the difference. That is in fiscal 29. That is the last year according to our funding schedule of making an unfunded liability payment. So there is a savings.
Congratulations.
Well, sure. Right.
You've worked on that. You have worked on that.
And your predecessor.
Yes, we have
Wow.
worked on that. So
It is really something. Look at that. Fiscal 30, there's nothing there. The 14 million is gone, right?
well, so the line above that, so in retirement in fiscal 29, the assessment is 3.9 million, and you can see in 30 it drops off to 2.1, and that's when we're just making the current system.
Good.
Just staying current, but the OPEB
Right, and then
appears in
Yeah.
32.
so OPEB, I think it was just last year that the town has been working on funding its OPEB liability. OPEB is other post-employment benefits. It's mostly health insurance for retirees. And we've been working at funding the unfunded liability since, I believe, 2009. Last year, we worked with our actuaries to come up with a level payment rather than having the payment bounce around. It was much easier for budgeting purposes. We settled on $1,465,000. And this liability is projected to be fully funded at the end of fiscal 31. Then beginning in fiscal 32, the cost associated with retiree health insurance is paid from the trust fund. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind.
Are we paying those kind of benefits to new employees or just finishing up with employees that had a better contract back in the day?
No, so under Mass General Law and approved by town meeting at some point, probably in the 1970s, the town of Concord provides health insurance benefit to retired employees.
Okay.
And so most of our employees are Medicare eligible, so we're providing a supplement plan, and that it used to be that municipal employees did not have to opt for Medicare. You could get full insurance through the town, but probably sometime in the early 2000s, the town would have adopted a section of Mass General Law which required Medicare eligible retirees to take Medicare as their primary. So that's really, what we have to say right now at 100,000 feet, and we'll have a lot more detail when we come back in October.
Good. Any short-term impacts from interest rates or investment returns being down so significantly this year?
So, on the general fund side, no, not really, because we are very limited in what we can invest in, and that what we can invest in really hasn't changed.
Right.
So on the but our retirement system, OPEB, we actually
And the, I'm sorry, excuse me for interrupting, and also the dedicated funds that we dedicate at town meeting.
stabilization funds or
Stabilization
No, they're
funds.
short-term invested.
And those can be invested more broadly than regular funds. Is that correct?
there's some additional discretion, but it's really our the trust funds, the retirement system, the OPEB trust fund that are more impacted by changes in the market. But with both of those, we blend gains and losses over a 4-year period, and so there aren't significant, we don't recognize significant gains or losses, but they're blended.
And the close, the prior year close from June, any surprises coming out of that, Carrie, as you guys get ready to close the books and
Yeah,
produce
more free
financials?
cash.
Yeah.
More, we do expect
out.
favorable results in free cash. We were able to close some older projects that had balances. Gail worked very hard to make some progress, and so yeah,
Good
we
job,
do.
Gail.
She's hunting down that money.
So what are the numbers?
Sure.
Not saying. No, we don't. No.
Stay
There's a
tuned.
song, right? That's
Stay
what the
tuned.
song-
Yeah, so our fiscal 22 revenues were higher than estimated. Our expenditures were lower, and then we had the closeout of some older articles. So we do, right now on the revenue side, we're
Stop right there. Revenues were up, expenses were down.
Right.
Thank you.
so we're still assuming on the revenue side that there'll be $1 million to use to reduce property taxes, and
Okay.
I would assume something to go into the middle school stabilization
Very
fund as
good.
well.
Good. And how's legal fees going?
We were under budget in fiscal 22, probably maybe not, somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000, I
But
believe, under
no
budget.
active litigation that's driving that to sort of gyrate.
Nothing significant at this point.
Hey, Carrie, along those lines, just to, not to delve into anything specific per se, but there was a specific piece of litigation that was driving a lot of the costs over the course of a couple of years. Is that litigation still active, or is that coming to some resolution? Because there was a lot of well, there was a lot of conversation about how do you forward forecast budgets, not quite sure where that was going to end up. So,
Yeah, so that particular case, we're awaiting the decision from the land court judge.
okay.
The trial was a year ago, June, and we're still awaiting the decision.
And then can I backtrack here for just a moment, if I may? Just curious to know, I was a little surprised that we've never done a compensation review since 2007. And
I believe we have.
okay,
The last full comprehensive comp and class study was 2007. In the interim years, we have done review and analysis in-house, but we've never looked at everything at once.
but to unpack that just a little bit, in-house, does that mean you were tapping sort of external market rate and reviewing that, or were you just sort of internally looking at what the rates were and sort of making a decision based on that information? Or not you per se, but the town over the course of the last decade plus? I'm just a little surprised.
Yeah. So when I said in-house, using in-house staff to do the analysis, looking at external data. So there are, for instance, the Mass Municipal Human Resources Association does a study every year where so we use that as one source of data.
Thank you.
Okay, it is now 8 o'clock, almost 8 o'clock. Any questions from members of the Finance Committee? I'm going to go around the people that took the time to drive in and park. Any questions? Okay, for those of you that didn't at home, any questions? Okay,
Can we see that screen?
Yeah.
Oh, you're controlling it? I don't know how.
No, I'm not controlling it, but I
No.
don't see any hands up.
no hands up?
Okay, great.
Okay, Carrie, thank you very much.
Carrie.
Thank you both. It sounds to me like it's going to be a good year with no surprises, no big. The usual surprises, in my experience, are sped and legal. So we're okay right now on those two things. And other than that, everything is kind of on the books. So, so that's great. All right, we are going to now move to the middle school building project. It's 8 o'clock. I would like this discussion to honestly stay within 20 minutes or less. I think most of us have heard it, been with it. There's volumes of data on the school system's website. I know not all of the FinCom has been following it as closely, but certainly the information is there. I don't think we have any new surprises. We had one big surprise when we got the estimate after schematic design, but I do appreciate Dr. Lori Hunter, who's here tonight and has been spending most of her life in this room and the school committee room, which I truly appreciate. So Lori, why don't you just give us, the sort of same update you gave the select board.
Perfect. And I'll
yeah.
fresh off the press from our
Sure.
3-hour meeting this morning.
Yeah, right. No, I'm not trying to invent anything new here.
So let me just put a couple of the slides up from the other night.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, I'll just set the stage for the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like this to be more informational. some questions. There's only, right now, we're not gonna, tonight, any of our questions and comments aren't gonna change what's already on the table from the middle school building committee, from the school committee, from the board of selectmen, et cetera. So we're really looking more to, get up to speed as to where we're at this point. And we can go from there.
So at a very high level, and I'm going to tell you to not focus on the letter named options. This is more of a story at this point. So the beginning here, this is where we were in August after the estimate came back in July, 5 million over what town meeting approved. So we jumped right into the value engineering process. I added it up today for my own sake, well-being, I don't know. We've been of meeting time focused on value engineering. So we've really taken it seriously, and to the credit of the professionals working with, they brought us valuable options to look at. The committees had other ideas and brainstorms, so we've vetted those as well. So right off the bat, by August, we had value engineered, which is another way to say reduced, $1.1 million. When we went into the meeting this morning, we were at 106.5 million because we had value engineered another 641,000. So that was where we were at 7:30 this morning. Just a reminder of budget.
Lori,
We had 102.8.
Lori, can you just describe
Sure.
a few, when you say value engineering, most people
Yep.
don't realize that's like taking your design and figuring out how to cut costs. Like
Correct.
if you're doing a kitchen, the
Correct.
windows,
I thought I'd
the
show you one of the
utilities. So but what are some of the things that you valued out, that you decided we can live without?
So here are some of the examples from today. So if I show you, this was the page we started with of
Okay.
pending options. And we literally go one by one through the options, and the committee discusses, asks questions, gets more information, and then we literally vote yes or no, whether to leave it in or reduce it out. So this was the list this morning where this is my rough estimate in adding it up all by myself with no professional help, another 400,000 this morning. So we've reduced about 2 million since the estimate came back this summer. So that's significant progress. There probably isn't a lot more to go. I think that's part of my message tonight is I think we're done. We actually officially have said that as a committee. So for example, this morning we looked at how the windows in the art rooms are going to be, whether they're going to be one long wall of windows or they're going to be more of a typical window. We were able to save $37,974 by going with a more typical window rather than the big curtain wall full of windows. So it's that level of detail that we've been looking at, up to bigger picture things. We've looked at triple pane.
No,
single
I think
pane.
that's
So you've got the idea.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you've got.
I don't want to
idea.
go all the way through the list.
I'm not going through the list for you. I'm not. So we're at about 3 million delta based on the estimate we got in July. In terms of timeline, we are about to go out for the next estimate. So the documents are due to the estimators next week by all our professional teams. We get that estimate back from the estimators in October, late October. That's what we've been calling the 60% design completion. This is all about the percent of completion of the drawings, the construction drawings. The closer we get to 90 and 100% completion, the more specific it is, and the tighter and tighter the estimate can get. However, in this volatile time, all of these other variables are playing into it as well, not just completion. So that's in October. Then we will get through the months of October and November, and then in December, we will have drawings to 90% that go out to the estimators again for a return of the 90% estimate in January. So really what's up for discussion now, and Matt's here, he can talk
And just
about it too.
to remind everyone, these are estimates.
Estimates. We don't go out
So
to bid until
they're
after this.
detailed estimates. We have
Right.
2 companies estimating, and then they sit around and say, well, I talked to this person and I got real numbers from that person. And they can compare and contrast what they've received for a reconciled estimate. So it should be real as of the day they get the estimate, but it's still not a bid.
Especially right now, because the biggest thing they're saying is we don't know what's coming next, and they're building in contingency for all this unknown escalation that they cannot predict. So that's really what's been driving this whole discussion, and anybody building is having the same challenge.
Right.
So in terms of timeline, we will get back that 90% estimate, to your point, in January. So the discussion happening right now, the select board talked the other night about the timing, considering a special town meeting to close that delta, the timing of that meeting and how it falls along the timeline of the project. Things that are part of that discussion are the fact that we need to have the professional architects keep working, and their contract says that they have to have a budget to work within. So that's got some play to it right now and how we manage that. Keeping on schedule is another factor that needs to be considered, because one of these slides that we showed the other night, our OPM project manager is showing, every month is $1 million-ish because of escalation and ongoing inflation. So trying to balance that. And then just really looking at, what does the 90% get us, and how does the timing work that we're able to still make this all happen? If we wait for the 90%, are we basing a lot of the warrant discussions on a special town meeting on the 60% because it comes in at the last minute? Is that a positive, or is that a challenge? And I think those are the discussions that are happening. Select board was bouncing a lot of those ideas around the other night, asked us to do more research on some of those topics, and that's what we're doing. Matt's communicating with us about their other
And Lori, the
questions, too.
difference, or maybe some members of our own team, the difference between 60 and 90%. At 60%, you're pretty locked in.
In terms of
90%, you're totally locked in. Other than the external environment, which is crazy, what could dramatically change if all things were equal, which we know they're not? What could dramatically change the cost of the project between 60 and 90%? Or
it really is those outside factors.
outside factors?
Yes, at least given where we are right now, the committee has reviewed all the big ticket items and whether or not we wanted to consider reducing those towards budget, the auditorium, the gymnasium, even triple versus double paned windows, those types of things. Those have remained in based on the committee's votes and decisions. And right now, those will be in the 60%. Really what the design team said to us, to try to go back and take especially gym and auditorium changes after 60% is a major redraw. And so if that happens, we'll be probably needing to relook at how we're managing their contract, because the time will start to change that they've got to go backwards.
And for the, I think most people in this room, especially you, know the answer to this, but there may be some members of our committee and people watching. The important thing to realize is that we can't go actually to bid the project without authorization. In other words, the town has got to approve a number before we can put it out to bid. We can't go out and say, gee, construction people, why don't you bid on this project if we haven't authorized the money to do it? So that drives that, and that requires a special town meeting and a vote at the ballot before it can actually, so that'll be after the 90, but before it, we can't bid without that having happened. So I, just for anyone that hasn't picked up that little detail, it's not a little detail, it's a big detail. Okay, I interrupted you again,
No,
sorry.
I think that's really where we are. I'd be here to answer questions and try to help you feel like you understand what's happening.
Yeah, I just have one question on risk. If we're looking at the 60 and the 90, when you wait to have a special town meeting until after you have the 90, it's pushing the time frame out into February, maybe March before a contract is let. Is there a risk in terms of the bidders? Is there a risk in terms of having, a shovel in the ground? Is there, what is the difference between having the decision in December and having it in January?
Right, so I
And
think
the
the
lags
competing
associated.
factors are trying to get the best possible accurate estimate we can versus the risk is the schedule, from my opinion, that if we get too tight to where we were gonna be with breaking ground, which was gonna be this spring, and things start to shift, and this building has had nothing but schedule implications with COVID and all the other things that have happened. So trying to mitigate those two competing pieces.
Is there also a difference in the cost for the design, for the architect? If they're, if they're doing their work all the way to the end, but then there are changes, the
There
implications.
could be risk there if town meeting doesn't approve what they've drawn, and we end up reverting back to the original vote in January, then those are major scale changes that
Right.
would require likely some redrawing of significant kinds.
Okay.
So that's another risk of some kind.
I think you said on Monday night at the select board meeting that the design contract is about 1.5 million from 60 to 90%. No, so that's 2 months. So that's $750,000 of design work per month. All right, my entire career was as a consultant. I don't even know how I could put that many people to work.
It's about 25 to 30 people on our project.
It's
at the
a
architecture
lot of
firm.
people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people, and to demob
Mhm.
and then mobilize, I mean, that's a bit of a nightmare. Christine, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Look at here. Tapping your hands.
I had something I wanted to
Have a-
talk about, so.
I have a quick question though on this. Outside of the value engineering that you've spent the whole summer doing, is anything else that any other cuts you made, would they be cuts that would affect the ed plan and therefore not on the table at this point? Or are there cuts
Yes.
that could be made that wouldn't affect the ed plan? that
We've
are
really
still out
taken the
there?
cuts that wouldn't affect the ed plan. The ed plan really has been the benchmark
Right.
throughout. That, and I think the sustainability article that was also voted at town meeting. Have there been a few compromises here and there on the ed plan? There have, makerspace, all that, but that was way back before we even got to town meeting. I think in this VE process, the committee was really thoughtful to think through the impact on students and teaching, and really did vote to preserve that. So I'm comfortable where we are right now, that was held.
And then I'm just wondering, like, the what if again, we see another big, several $1 million increase in October, like, will we just go to town meeting with looking for that warrant, or is there another alternative?
I can talk to that, and so can Matt. You all know Matt Johnson, our select board chair, is here tonight. Thank you, Matt.
He's lived every hour of this discussion at every committee level. So.
Another regular in this room. I'm in his seat tonight, I guess. And the answer to that is the warrant will be open and closed. And right now, per the meeting on Monday, it's 100% the select board's decision when and if to open a town meeting warrant. And the current plan is to open the warrant on October 20th. Matt, am I looking at that right diagram? Yeah. Okay. Okay, this would open the warrant on October 20th and close it on November.
Yeah, the estimate's back on the 20th.
Okay, I've got, I'm looking at something a little out of date then. So we would have the 60% estimate. We will open, the select board would then open the warrant, and then close it 11 days later on November 4th. There would be a joint hearing of the Finance Committee and the Concord Middle School Building Committee. And then, once the warrant is closed, and just so everyone understands, there would be an article on the warrant for the funding of the middle school. There may be other articles if they're submitted during that period, but let's assume that that may be the only article. Now, that article can be for the 106, 107, wherever we're at, or it could be more, let's say 110, 115, so that when you actually go to town meeting, now, it looks like we would end up getting the 90% estimate just prior to the town meeting. So if we get the 90% estimate on January 6th, and we have a special town meeting on January 13th, we will have an updated number. That number might be lower, it might be higher. But if the select board who creates the article adds a buffer in there, say to 115, which doesn't mean at all that that's the
I think her
budget or
question was
estimate.
different, though. I think her question was, what happens if
I'm gonna
the
get to
number
it.
comes back higher?
Yeah,
And will
I'm-
there be VE again? The answer is there won't be.
No, but what I'm trying to point out is if we have the warrant article is got a buffer in it, so that, I thought your question was, do we have to reissue the warrant? Do we have the town meeting motion, which could be different than the article, needs to be within the scope of the article. And that is determined by the town moderator and town council. So if it's lower than the warrant article, it's not an issue, right? She'll agree to it. If it's higher, then we have a problem. So it's good for the select board to throw in that buffer. Lindsay, what you're thinking of is, I guess, is a buffer, so that the warrant has, I'm not gonna use the term, but I'm gonna say the term, like, upper limit. There's, of course, no upper limit, because we have no idea what's gonna happen, but if we put in a high number and it comes in below and within that number, and that number isn't gonna, because we have two bidding reviewers, it's not gonna say to the contractors, ooh, freebie for you.
But there's different parties in town, right, that would be
Yes.
involved in this, right? So you have the building committee who will come forward with a dollar amount for the warrant article. So they have a potential number of 115. They haven't yet finalized that, I don't believe. So I'm sure they'll look at the information that comes in at the end of October, which is the 60%, and use that to come up
I
with
think we
what
did
they-
vote the 115. We're certainly going to talk
Yeah,
about
but
it again.
you'll relook at it,
yeah.
I assume, when
Of
when the
course.
next round of numbers
With the
comes in.
select board.
Yes.
Right, the select board would be looking at it. FinCom also looks at it. So there's a meeting, you can see it on that schedule there on November 3rd. So the building committee will come here to talk to us about what the request will be in the warrant article, so that we can hear and discuss that. And we will actually take a vote as finance committee on the number and the request in the warrant article. So there'll be discussion amongst this group as to whether we support that request or not. There'll also be a public hearing. So we'll have a public hearing. I think it's up there on December. Again, these dates are sort of
December
tentative.
1st,
So I think that still, the calendar's still being finalized. But there'll be a public hearing that we run where we ask the public to come, and we get a chance to ask questions again of the building committee and others who are presenting the request, as well as the public. So that process then feeds into our deliberations, and then we'll take a vote on whether to support or not support what the request is.
But it's still up to the select board to present to, or the. school
Well, then we
committee.
issue a report, right? So we
Yeah,
issue a
well,
report
we'll
to
issue-
advise town meeting as to how
Correct.
they should vote. And
Yeah.
that's based on our deliberations. Obviously, the select board does the same thing.
But we're not preparing the warrant article.
No, no, we're
That's
not.
my point.
No, no, we're not, right?
Yeah.
But we do
Or
weigh
the
in.
motion. Oh, yes, we do. We will
With
absolutely
this-
weigh in.
With this schedule that's presented here, if I understood correctly at Monday night's meeting, when you have the townwide vote, it still is another week to 2 weeks before bids go out, or requests for bids come in, not come in,
Yes.
but they go out. It takes a couple of weeks. And so I guess I'm just wondering, what is the time frame then? What would be to get the estimates, to get the bids from the contractors?
Right, so
That
our
schedule.
bid package is due to be complete on February 22nd. This is the timeline we're working
Okay.
off of right now.
Okay.
And then we would get that back. Let me see if I've got it right here. It takes a few weeks to get it back.
Yeah.
So that's the timeline we're trying to hold while we plan town meeting. So that's some of the discussion still going on, is how tight is that?
Okay, so realistically, with this approach, we're really talking about maybe work starting in end of April, beginning of May?
Yes, that's what we've been hearing,
Okay.
breaking ground somewhere in April-ish.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, following our agenda and my 20-minute schedule. And the last part of it was to discuss the impact on the excluded debt. Christine, do you want to go over this, or do you want me to, or?
Can you put it up on the screen?
Which-
I don't know. So I had slides to talk about most of what Lori covered, which is sort of where they were
Okay.
on value engineering. The only, the things I would add, I mean, I think she pretty much covered it, is it's the question that you asked. So the committee was fairly restrictive, I think, in their look at what could come under value engineering. There was 12.2 million identified by the OPM, which is their professional, the groups that they have helping them with this. So of that 12.2, but there were some pretty big amounts that you wouldn't expect to take anyway, right? So there was no demo of the building, there was don't have any fields,
Yeah.
and they had the gym and they had the auditorium. So if you actually sort of cut down to it, there was probably maybe 8 million or so that was left to sort of go through. So of that, they've got about 2, right? So there's still stuff left. But if you look at what the parameters were, right? So don't touch the education spaces, don't play with the gym or the auditorium, don't touch the net zero. There isn't a whole lot to go from there, right? So it was fairly restrictive in terms of what they were willing to change. So I think the message that comes out of the design work is that they are very wedded to the design. The cost increases, they did what they could, I think, within the areas that they were willing to look at. They took adjustments, but outside of that, they would not. And so the design is not likely to change. So if there are, the opportunities for cost increase are, as Lori has pointed out. So we have the end of October, we're going to get the next round. In January, we're going to get the 90% round. And again, the design isn't changing now. It's just going to be what prices are coming in at. And then you have bids. So we have 3 more opportunities for cost escalation. If the design is not likely to change, if there is additional escalation, that'll come. There'll be somebody asking for money, which is why we want to get the number right. Because if we don't get it right, there'll be another round. As Peggy mentioned, you can't have bidding if you don't know what the budget number is. And so if the bids come in higher than the budget number that's approved at the next special town meeting, we go back to ground zero.
Ground zero.
Okay, we have to start again. So the issue of contingency in this budget will be really important, right? So they've value engineered to where they are, but now they have to figure out contingency. So in the budget that we voted at special town meeting in January, there was about a 5%, which is, I believe, the industry standard
Yes.
on the construction cost. And in addition, the select board added 2 million. So we had some contingency. The 2 million for bidding, we kept that specifically for the bidding in April. That's still there. The 5% is in there, but I assume that in the 115, there's going to be a discussion of more contingency. So when the building committee comes back, my expectation is you'll be able to explain to FinCom, how do we get from the 106, which is actually where you are now,
Right.
to the 115? And that should be some discussion of inflation, but math, right? I'm looking for math and a rationale.
Right now, the delta between the town meeting vote and the estimate is a 5% contingency that the estimators added in because they have so many unknowns. So it is all a math activity and
Right.
a lot of wishing we had this crystal ball. We don't have.
Well, of course we don't.
Yeah.
But whatever we come back with, don't expect the design to change unless the town says no. So if the town says no, Lori, I assume we go back to the drawing board and figure out what to do.
Town says no, we're
But the town could, right? It's their
absolutely
it's
back to
their
the drawing
option.
board.
Okay.
So the spreadsheet that I'm looking at assumes a 5% interest
Okay, so
over 25 years. And this would be for the additional 7 million over and above what was already approved.
where do you get the 7 million from? Because I don't know where that number comes from. Where does the 7 million, where did that come
That
from?
comes from, the 102.8 was approved at
Right,
town meeting.
right.
7 is going to take it to 110, 112.
Where does that come from?
It's just,
I didn't know that was a
just
number
under
rolling
110.
around.
I mean, it's not
Okay,
necessarily
so
rolling
right,
around, but
Right, so the other element that's in there is to the 115. So if we
Okay.
assume that they go to the 115, now they may not spend all the 115, right? So you
Yeah.
might not need it.
That approach was not to exceed 115.
Yeah, but what's the real number? So I don't, okay,
Okay.
so but let's use the 115,
Yeah,
right? So if
well-
we use the 115, then the number goes from where we were at town meeting, it was $1,000 to the median tax bill. It goes to around 1,400, so it's $300 to $400 increase. So on the median tax bill for $14,000, that's about what the median tax bill is. So in total, the increment for the middle school is about 10% bump, right? So when it hits, so that'll be a bump every year for 25 years or so, but that's what it looks like now. And that's does two factors. One, we had an increase in the budget, which were, from the, whatever it is, 103 to 115, that's a bump, but also the interest rate assumption is at 5% now. So those two elements are what drive
Okay.
the number up.
Right.
so the number I received from Bob, and I think you've also seen
Yep,
this,
yep,
okay.
I think everybody has. right?
Yeah,
You also
okay,
have this
so,
chart?
so at 115, the difference between what was at 5% and a 115, which we don't expect would be bid out, but you never know. But if town meeting approved up to 115 with a 5%, that in fiscal 25 would be $150 per year. Is that per year or per month, Bob?
It's per year, it's year, but it's
Per
not
year.
150, it's more like 300, I think.
No, the 150 is over and above what was already approved.
It's the last box. in
The last box, the 150 is
I guess it depends on what year you pick.
over, and I picked, well,
25.
that's the highest year. 24 is 154,
No,
150,
that's the additional 12 million. right?
over and above what was already approved, correct?
I don't get that, because, can you explain that? Because my numbers show it like it's 300.
If you look at this comparable number to what Peggy's talking about right now, with the baseline budget that was approved at the interest rates that exist, it'd be around $1,280 a year.
Right.
So that's the 107, no, 10,
No,
102.8,
Um,
103 million,
102 and change, correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then if we added,
Then you go down here and it's another $150 more than that.
Yeah.
If you add 12 million to the original.
Right.
How come, Bob, when I just look at the dollar change and excluded debt load, and where that is on that schedule, it shows like it goes from 1,000 to 1,400 or 1,100 to 1,400. That's what I was looking at.
Could also be the interest rate impact.
Yeah, I assume so. It's both. I'm looking for both.
Back here.
So maybe that's the
I see
difference.
I see what you're
With the
saying. I
original
see what,
budget.
yeah, I do, I do.
I looked at both. I didn't
Use
separate it.
4%?
At
5% now.
At 4% with the original approved budget, it's about $1,150.
Right there.
Okay.
So
760.
Yeah,
And now we're going up to 1433.
right. So that's the 300 that I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about, right? So it's a bump, right? So 1,400 on a $14,000 average median tax bill is a 10% bump. That's
it turns
what
out that
I'm talking about.
$300
If
is
you were to
about
borrow
half
all
and
of it.
half on half as interest rates.
Yes,
and half
okay,
as project.
okay, that makes sense to me now.
Okay.
Any
so
questions on that? So do people understand that? It's a little complicated.
It's going to cost you more money. Any further questions? I'm not trying to make light of this. Matt, join us at the table. We are welcoming our select board chair.
Just
Johnson?
relative to that last discussion, I think that one thing to point out is that even if the project remained at 102.8, the higher interest rate is driving almost half of that additional cost. So we're, even treading water, we're sinking.
Not treading water.
Yeah. So
Our life jacket's coming off.
yeah. So it's just worth knowing, that the conditions have changed even
Yes.
with the base budget. And then you talk about escalation in scope or cost, and you've got a double whammy. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question of Dr. Hunter? Dr. Hunter, you had made a reference to a 5% contingency. Is that actually a contingency, or was that the interest rate you were referencing?
No, so the estimators, in the estimate we got back in July, they built in 5% additional based on the lack of faith they have in what's going to come next. It's very unusual what's going on here right now, but that's what happened.
I could jump in. So there's typically a bid contingency and then a
Right.
construction contingency.
Right.
So is that a total of 5%, or is the bid contingency 5 and you have as well a construction?
They've essentially added 5% on top of their estimate because they're so unsure of it.
That's what a contingency is.
Right,
And that's
but the-
normal, and 5% is not
So there's two.
atypical.
There's two
So
contingencies.
that's
It's
my question.
additional.
That's an
Yes,
additional
it's
5.
additional.
Okay, so there may
Yes.
be a 15% at this stage
Yeah.
of this that is contingency.
Fit,
And
right.
I think that prices are moving in our favor right
Let's
now.
hope.
Certainly steel has dropped by
Yeah,
half.
yeah.
Copper coming way down, lumber.
And you
is
may have
back to
noticed on
back
the
to
first
pre-pandemic.
estimate, it was 2 million
So
for the roof.
Yes.
So if you happen to bid it out when someone's got a lot of rubber on their lot, you could luck out. But
So my question is there a process for approving any spend of that contingency amount? In other words, if town meeting votes to approve this dollar amount of spend, but we could get the building done for less.
Yes.
However, we've already cut a lot, so we'd like to add it back.
So you'd have to have done an add alt process here, and we didn't do that. We knew when we took these cuts, we were taking them. So, and we're, as a committee, fine with that. We didn't have, that would be the way you do it. You put an add alt on and say, if we have the money within the budget, we'd put this back on. We didn't take that as a strategy.
I think as well, Don, so the select board has a $2 million bidding contingency that they put on top. That can't be used, I think, without
No.
going to the select
Yeah, that
board.
has
Am
to
I
be used for
correct?
bidding only.
Right, so it
yeah.
can only be used for bidding, and and I think they maybe have some say on that. And I think if they, depending on what they come back with for contingency, when we discuss what's in the 115 or whatever the number is that they come forward with, I think that's a good discussion there as well, to say what will be the constraints over the use of this amount.
Definitely.
Yeah.
it's a very good question. Because, you don't want to approve something at town meeting and make it feel like hey, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which has come up in most all the discussions. for sure.
I think that's somewhat why we didn't go the adult option, because we want a very straightforward, clear plan here with everyone.
One of the other things, Dr. Hunter, maybe you could speak to is, at one point, there was a discussion of having options. And I think FinCom even had some discussions about that, and I think that's now not going to happen. So
Yeah,
could you
it's
speak to that?
evolved to really the options are to fund the one design we've landed on or not. Just as we went through the VE process and we were consolidating, there was consensus that multiple options wasn't really how this was going to come together, and it would also be confusing like this. So.
And you VE'd down to like a $4 million delta at this point. Which
Or
is,
even a little less.
yeah, a
depending
lot
on-
less than
yeah.
the 9 million that everyone was.
Yeah, we're
5.3, and they're down to 3 million.
Yeah, it's
Three
about
something.
3 right
Yeah,
now
right.
on paper,
Which is, you know, a
as
good-
of
a
today.
good job.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to close this discussion unless there's any other FinCom members. We'll have public comments
Is there
at the
anybody on the screen?
end.
I can't see anybody. If anyone else has questions, Peggy, I don't know. Okay,
Okay.
great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
an early night
Come
for
back as often
you.
as you'd like.
The next thing on our agenda is to discuss ARPA, but I'm not actually sure we have anything to discuss on that.
No, we want to hear what the town is doing on
Yeah.
ARPA, so I think it would be great to hear from either Carrie or Bob on where they are on the plan for spending on ARPA. That's what we wanted on
Okay.
the agenda, particularly, you know, if there was some discussion of using it for some other projects in town, but I don't know what's going on with ARPA, so whether you want to do it here,
No,
Carrie, or
let's do it.
somewhere else,
Yep.
but it'd be good to give us an update.
Sure, I can
Thank
take,
you very much.
I can just take a few minutes to give the committee an update. We weren't exactly sure what you were looking for, so we didn't put anything in your packet. But back in June, I made a presentation to the select board on ARPA spending priorities for fiscal 22 and 23. I'm not sure if any of you watched that, but we have received or will receive $5.7 million in ARPA funding. And through fiscal 23, we will have either committed or targeted 1.7 million of that in spending. And so that leaves a balance of, about 3.95. And the conversation with the select board is that at least we would start with allocating or thinking about allocating a third of that balance each year for the next 3 years, and that we would contemplate prioritizing that either through the operating or capital planning budget process. So it is grant funding, it's grant funds, there's no further appropriation needed by town meeting, but that we would sort of consider it through that process. And at this point, there are lots of ideas. I think, every week there's a new idea for how we're going to spend the money, but I think we're generally thinking for capital projects, for infrastructure, most likely, and I would say probably transportation or utility related, and I would include broadband in utility. Those are the types of things that we're looking at, not necessarily for the operating budget or anything like that.
So we'll see it in the budget process then? Is that how we'll see it for FY
We-
'24?
We will highlight it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if those funds are being used, you'll be telling us.
Yes.
And could you tell us what's in the 1.7 that's in the FY '23?
Sure. So I'll start with fiscal 22. So in fiscal 22, town meeting appropriated $400,000 for parking meters. That was part of the budget process. That was the
That was
first.
lost revenue?
Yes, lost revenue.
What year was that? That's
22.
22.
Okay, 22.
And then $100,000 for the trolley demonstration project.
Is that over
was
now?
It's still ongoing
Okay.
through the fall season. And then the final was up to $300,000 in hazard pay.
In what?
Hazard pay,
For COVID frontline workers?
yes. So that's a total of $800,000 that was programmed in fiscal '22. And then in fiscal '23, $500,000 for affordable housing in lieu of an appropriation from free cash. And that was done through town meeting. And then there are five other items that we are considering that were highlighted and presented to the select board. $200,000 for transportation initiatives, $125,000 for economic development initiatives, another $30,000 for affordable housing, $25,000 to address cell service deficiencies, and then $20,000 for cultural arts. And the agreement on those 5 items those were concepts, and as proposals were firmed up, they'd be brought back to the select board for discussion.
They will be, or they have been?
They will be.
They will be, okay.
Carrie, I think I heard, and correct me, please, that you have to have all the ARPA funds not spent, but allocated by December 2024.
December 31, 2024, right, you committed,
You've
expended,
okay.
fully
Encumbered.
expended by December 31, 2026.
You have to
Okay.
encumber it essentially by some date. Yeah.
Yeah, a commitment. And we're required to file periodic reports, so it would be committed on those reports.
Are you going to use a different process for that? I think that part of that discussion also said, being able to have more involvement of the public somehow.
Right, and that's why we will take these up in conjunction with budget
Town meeting too.
and capital planning discussion,
Okay, all right.
review
So
process.
we're not going to go to town meeting. It's going to come through the budget process. Okay, Dee, I just want to make sure you've got that. It's
It
not going to
does
be a
come
separate.
through, I thought it was.
It's going to
it's
be
gonna
in the
come
budget
through
process.
the budget process for FY '25.
For 24, 25, 26.
Okay.
That's what we're planning on. Now,
Okay.
this is the understanding, at some point in the future, we could decide based upon the needs that, we're going to do it over a 2-year period versus a 3-year period. But we just haven't made those. not
That was going to
far.
be my question is, what is the advantage of doing it over 3 years? I have no idea whether this could be at risk at all, but I know that there's talk in Congress about capturing the unspent COVID stimulus funds, or not, items like this, and redirecting that money. So I wonder if we wouldn't be smart to utilize it this year.
So we have 50% of our allocation in hand, and the other 50% coming by the end of this month or next month. We just got word, so we will have it in hand.
we have it.
Yeah,
And do those funds have to relate to COVID in any way?
they do, yes. They need to be used, very broad categories, but public health, economic impacts of the public health emergency, lost revenue, the hazard pay for essential workers, water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. So it has to fall within those categories. I know it doesn't say like transportation. It can be used for transportation too.
Could they? Never mind.
That's it then. So the 5.7, we're not going to get anything else. It doesn't look no other money's coming. That's it.
Nothing else through ARPA, but there are a number of other grant programs that we're looking at.
Okay.
So there's 4 million left. Who decides on how those are spent? The select board?
Between the select board and myself, we will come up with the spending priorities. But again, in the context of the operating and capital budgets. So we're not looking to we wouldn't be looking to something totally off the wall that we wouldn't be contemplating funding.
But something like a safer transportation between Concord, downtown Concord and West Concord, or
Yeah, I think that,
like a overpass or something.
I was with you
iPad
with
project.
safer transportation. Or we're certainly
Bike and
looking at
ped pass over Route 2 for the middle school, the new middle school. Okay, not my place, not my place.
Sorry, on, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought now. There's no restriction on us using it. I'm just trying to think. We're going
Who
to see it in the
decides
budget.
public
Yeah,
involvement?
right,
Next
right.
time they come to us.
Oh, I don't know what it is. It's
All
out
of
my
the
head.
above.
It's out of my head. Okay.
Okay.
Is there a, is there a risk? I know the categories are really broad, and it sounds like the final regulations that the Treasury Department issued, it was made even broader.
Yes.
But is there any risk in the context of the reporting we're on the hook to do, that the federal government could turn around and say,
Well,
"That
because
wasn't an authorized use"?
Because they just added 5 years to the statute of limitation for fraud on ARPA money.
Well, I think
Private.
at less than 10
So-
million, you don't even have to
But
do
is
the
there, is there
reporting.
any, like, is there an audit risk, and they'll turn around and try to recover the funds? How
Are
do they, how do they?
Are they assuming it's all lost revenue? Is that
Yeah,
where
I think
we're
so.
going?
Lost
Yeah.
revenue
Yeah.
is the category.
Right.
We don't have to do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah,
It's like
So-
free cash.
right. So there,
No, it's,
as a
Is free
part,
cash.
as a part of the final
Yeah.
ruling, they encouraged all non-entitlement communities, so communities under 50,000 in population, to consider it for federal government purposes as lost revenue. Right, and so that is how we are reporting lost revenue, but we internally are still looking at sort of the original intent of that money.
So Eric, it's like a catch-all. So because all these towns can say that they had lost revenue, you can apply for that. And if you can do that up to 10 million, go ahead, so I think they're not going to look for excessive reporting. There are a lot of rules at certain levels, but I think for what we're doing, there isn't going to be that any high risk of non-compliance. And I think what we're doing is certainly within what we can do.
Yes.
I know what my question was.
Yeah.
So if you were talking before about infrastructure and the roads, so is that something that you'd consider for the ARPA money, or is that something that we might get other federal grants in this infrastructure bill?
I
that
think
might-
we're hoping that we'll be eligible for some of the other grant
Okay.
programs, but the timetable, I can't remember. It's much slower for the infrastructure and the IIJA. The timetable is not lining up well with our
With your
budget
needs.
process. Doesn't mean we're not following it, not going to apply
Yeah.
if we believe that we're
but you did
eligible.
mention transportation as something on your capital plan.
Yes.
So maybe we could use this instead.
Yeah, and I think
And
here, we're-
not use the capital, use the capital on the school. It's just money. Okay.
Okay,
all right.
thank you.
Any other questions on ARPA money? Thank you, Christine, for being on it. Okay, affordable housing. Ray, do you want to take the lead on this? Love it if you clicked your, oh, you're on mute. You're on mute and you have 2 windows.
Okay, yes, well, the other window, I'm in Western New York, so my connection's a little sketchy on the computer. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I guess just to go over this project, the Christopher Heights Junction Village project, people probably know, but we'll assume a very cursory summary. When the project was originally started, well, actually, the Department of Correction gave the land to the town of Concord. And so the town of Concord, through the CHDC, apparently owns the land. And they got an estimate from a developer to build 83 affordable units on the property. And the cost estimate was $17 million at the time. And the town of Concord, both from free, committed $1 million from free cash, and CPC committed $1 million from their funds. And there was an additional agreement, I think a little later in the process, for tax abatement or tax, not abatement, is not the wrong word, for tax credits, I guess, once they become operational. So, and the tax credits, I believe, were capped at $2 million. Maybe someone can, I've heard different numbers, so that might be subject to correction. So the developer in June of this year got an estimate, or put together a cost estimate of about $28 million. So that's $9 million greater than the original estimate. And they went to Department of Housing and Community Development, state office, asking for more money. And the Department of Housing and Community Development replied they would consider an application for additional funds, but the town must increase its contribution beyond the $2 million. So that's where it stands now. And so the town is being asked to contribute more money. And I guess the form that is in is basically $1 million for a packaged sewer treatment, a sewer package to address the sewer created by the project. So one of the major impact of this is affordable housing in Concord, and the 83 units that were proposed were part of what is considered, well, what is called the SHI, the subsidized housing inventory, which needs to be 10%. And it was, we were above 10% until these units are no longer included because they haven't been, I guess the building permit has not been issued, and at some point they fell off recently. And so when the new SHI is calculated, probably in the spring of 2023, when the new census number is created, without those 83 units, Concord will be below the 10%. So if the project does not go forward, Concord will no longer be in safe harbor. And that has an implication for 40B development, which could impact future development of places like the Rural Business District or other large parcels. And also Concord will not qualify for the environmental building pilot program, as I understand it. So and the select board is trying to decide whether to approve this additional funding that the DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, has requested. And so we're in for $2 million at this point, and if we committed another $1 million, it would be $3 million. So, and if we say no, which apparently there's certainly some consideration of that, and I think the FinCom should certainly consider that as a possibility. If we say no, we lose 83 units, but we also save $2 or $3 million, three if you include the 1 million we're being asked for. So,
Ray, I'm gonna just ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Who actually owns the property?
I believe the town of Concord, I mean, CHDC, Concord Housing Development Corporation owns it at this point.
So not the developer.
No, no.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, I just confirming that for everybody who may have wondered. The developer, this is not a 40B project.
Right,
The developer has a memorandum of agreement with the town saying that they would not come back to the town for more money.
yep,
The developer implied to the select board on Monday night that if they couldn't get the town money, they would basically walk away from the
Right.
project.
right,
The select board, at least one member of the select board, felt that they had a legal obligation to make good on the agreement.
that's correct.
Whether or not they get any more, to make good on the agreement, and that they were not free to walk away. So I just mention this because it seems to me that one of the scenarios is that the developer does walk away. CHDC owns the land, and it could put it out to a friendly 40B, which wouldn't cost the town either one of those $1 million, not the free cash and not the CPC. Then maybe it's 83 units, maybe it's 75, maybe it's 50, I don't know. But it would be enough to get us over that hump.
Right.
For, and if we could keep, so from,
Yes.
okay, I'm not the Board of Selectmen, sorry. Just talking about money. And it seems to me there is a path toward getting to our SHI 10% without the town spending any money because we own the land. If the developer walks, we can put it out to a friendly 40B, save ourselves a couple million, still get won't have as many affordable units in the development because I think the current proposal is 100% affordable.
That's correct.
As opposed to 40B, which is 25% technically affordable. So
One of my observations that
yes.
I picked up that I really didn't understand until this latest round of a request for funds is that the developer, and he agreed to this question on Monday night, he really has no or feels no obligation and is making no agreement to cover any cost escalation on this project. So
correct.
his deal is completely separate, right? So he does this, he sets it up, he gets the tax credits, he finds the investors. It's a process. He will, hire contractors to actually build it, and then eventually he will run the thing. But since we started this a long time ago, the reason why he keeps coming back for money is that he's not putting any more money in. He's not. So just to make sure you're aware of this, right? So the whole deal with the $1 million that he's now come back to us for is based on him getting $7 million from the state. My understanding is that is a maximum amount that the state will grant under this new ARPA thing that they're doing with affordable housing. So if he doesn't get the 7 million, he will come back. Or let's say he does get the 7 million and we give him $1 million and costs go up yet again between now and when he puts a shovel in the ground, he will be back. So we don't really know what it will cost us. So not unlike we were just talking about with the middle school, we have a problem with respect to cost escalation that the way this is working, the town and the taxpayers will own. It still may be a valuable deal, right? You still have to look at what what the costs are compared to other things you want to do. But the problem that's evolved here with the town is we keep asking him to sign something that says you won't come back for more money.
Well, he did already sign that.
He signed it twice, but he knows what I just said to you, which I didn't understand, is that he's always going to come back for money because he's got no skin in the game until he builds the building. So I don't think that was clear maybe it wasn't clear to me, and I don't think it was made clear in some of the town meetings. I think if we had told people this is the way the deal works, perhaps we might feel differently about this, but anyway, I just wanted to make sure people understood.
Yeah. Yeah, there is, yeah, I don't understand it quite that way, but I know that he said he would walk away if he didn't get the million, basically.
Yes.
And so.
Pretty clear.
He was pretty clear on that.
He was pretty clear. And I think that was a change from when he came back the last time. My sense of listening to Mr. Ohanian, whatever it was, 2 or 3 years ago, he was very interested in retaining the project. At this point, he doesn't seem to be. I don't know why that
Not
is, but he
anymore.
does
Well,
not
I
seem
just
to be
think
that
because he
interested.
knows he can't build it for the right amount of money, and I think when one of the select board members put it to him that he didn't have that it was a contract, he didn't have the right to walk away. He was not interested in that as a possibility. Anyway, continue.
Right. Yeah, I think that.
Just a second, Ray. Ray, we got a question here at the table.
I was going to say that additional detail was really helpful. And it'd be good, I think, before we just make a recommendation on any additional expenditure, to know the nature of the contract with that entity and whether or not we have the right to cancel. And as you say, a friendly 40B proposal put out there. I did go on the site tour that was scheduled, I guess it was in the spring. And from that, I learned that there's additional land beyond the land that's been committed to the Christopher Heights, and it's basically the subject of a park.
Right. Yes, there is a park.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of the town's overall opportunity here for affordable housing, there may be, if we're not locked into a contract, this may be worth taking another look at what we do with this piece of land in total.
Right. I think, well, first of all, if we did put in $3 million and got 83 units, that would be what, 36,000 per unit. And so that's an attractive number, although I understand what Chris is saying.
That excludes the TIF though, Ray, right? So that excludes, the TIF.
Yes, right, that's right.
Well, there's 2.65 million in a tax exemption we gave him as well, right? So that's on top.
And that's real money, you know.
Right, that's real money.
That's money.
That's I don't know how much revenue that property would generate. Yeah,
yes,
okay, that's right. That's real money.
That's true. It can't be used for anything but affordable housing.
Yeah.
It's restricted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, sorry, Ray, go ahead.
I was just going to say that as far as is there money available? Yes, the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust has $1 million and said they would support this project. So the money, in one sense, exists. It doesn't mean we should spend it, but it just it means it exists. But however we approach, it will obviously impact taxpayers. I mean, that's money that we spent someplace else. The other issue I think that we need to consider as far as putting it out to another developer is the time. We would be outside of safe harbor for some period of time. It takes probably, I don't know how long it would take. I'm not as familiar with that process as I would need to be to suggest a number, but it would suggest a time period. But that is a factor. Brian.
Right. Just from a timing perspective, so I think that the submission to the state that Mr. Ohanian was looking for would be sometime in October. So I think either we're going to do it or we're not. The select board didn't agree to do it on Monday. Are they going to meet again on it? Is there going to be another meeting, or are we done?
Well, Matt's still there, right?
Okay, there is a select board member here, but he has recused himself from this entire discussion, so we're not going to hear about it. No, I don't think it was conclusive. I think the end of the meeting was that they were going to look into the contract. Although,
we're going to have the attorney look into the contract.
And we're just the FinCom. I would like to be rid of this guy. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, Peggy. I was just going to ask, was it actually, my recollection is the agreement where he wouldn't go over Mr. Ohanian, I guess that's his name. These were memorandums of understanding. These weren't exactly contracts, right? And
I
so,
don't know. I absolutely cannot answer that question.
You're
absolutely
right, Brian,
cannot.
that what the components that were related to don't come back and ask us any more money were probably MOUs, but there may be another contract with him over the development. I don't know.
because the way he's behaving suggests, and I don't know this for certain, but it sort of suggests he already knows he has the leverage here. Or
He's behaving that way. You're right.
the firm, his firm has the leverage here. So it's like he knows we need these affordable housing units.
Yep.
And he also knows that, things are moving in dynamic. So if we want these houses, we're going to have to put up some more cash. He's going to press us on that. And how badly do we want these units? So this is very much just, what do we want to be doing? And, what is our ceiling on this? And we just need to be very clear on that.
Right.
Agreed. Thank you. Ray? Anything else? Anyone at the table?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's,
Anybody else on Zoom?
Anyone else at the table or
On Zoom,
hiding
nobody's
on
raised
Zoom?
hands. Nobody raised
I
hands.
think, okay, so I think I could summarize the FinCom's view that we don't want to put up any more money. We think they're,
yeah.
I back up
The timing is
Should we ask people that?
October 27th. The developer has to submit a
Yeah, but we
I'm
have
sorry.
a specific question of, are you for it or against it? I don't know if you want to do that now or not.
Okay.
We don't have to do it now, but
okay.
typically that's what we do.
Okay, thank you. Greg, were you saying something?
I was not. I think that was Ray.
Ray? Ray?
Yeah, I was trying to say that as I understand it, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Boy, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, the deadline for submitting the pre-application package, I believe, is October 27th. So that I don't know how much time he needs to prepare between a select board decision and October 27th, but that's the constraint there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray. Good info.
Okay, then. Any further comments in terms of FinCom view on this subject? What I've heard so far is that we know the developer is coming back for more money after signing a memorandum of agreement not to ask for any more money. If we don't have a 40B, we don't have more affordable housing soon, we will lose our safe harbor exemption for the 10% and be subject to hostile 40B or friendly 40B. No one in the committee has suggested they want to contribute more money to this project unless I'm mistaken. I know there's more money in the CPC this year. They actually only had applications for 3/4 of the money this year.
A little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Madam
So-
Chair,
Yes,
can I ask a question here, though, based on that comment?
yes, Brian.
I don't want to belabor this conversation tonight,
No,
but
that's fine. That's fine.
but I do feel like we need to be very clear here about what we're actually asking. No one wants to spend any more money on this deal. That's very clear, I think. But we find ourselves in a situation that requires we have to kind of go back to the table here and ask ourselves, at what price are we willing to pay? What's the maximum price we're willing to pay for each of these units in aggregate? And if it's more than where we currently are, then I guess, maybe there's another deal to be had here. But if we have reached our threshold, then we walk away and then we deal with the consequences of not meeting our 40B requirement. But I don't think I don't think we've gotten there quite yet, right?
Yes, Brian, I think that you have put it very well. That is kind of where the finance committee comes in. There's a policy question, a very significant one, that's merged with a financial question that you articulated very well.
I think there's also a time issue.
And timing. That would be the policy side.
Which is on the policy side, which comes into effect next spring.
Yeah.
If we don't have our units committed, then we are subject to the 40B. We're not subject to the 40, a developer can come in. I think the point though that Brian was getting to was also a unit cost. And if you look at one of the latest attempts that the Concord Housing Authority made to build the property, which is over at the Giroux Park, they could not find anyone to build a unit for $750,000. And so it's now Habitat for Humanity. Humanity is going to build the unit there. So if you figure, all right, any unit that you build is going to be $750,000 minimum, how does that compare with the 83 units that we have at, I forget what you said, Ray, the unit cost was? $36,000. There's a big discrepancy there to the town. So so I think that is something that we also have to consider. Also, at the property over where Junction Village, Christopher Heights was going to be developed, I don't know, maybe Don would have a better sense of this being an architect. How many units can you build there and at what costs? If they're going to be single family dwellings, if they're going to be doubles, how would you do that? What's the impact to the community there? So I think that I think that this has been going on for years, right? And that's been the discussion over the years. So maybe we need to just think a little bit more about what side we lead on, in terms of value or in terms of impact to the town, whatever parameter somebody wants to use.
My concern, I agree that.
Ray's got his hand up.
Yeah, sure.
Ray.
I'm sorry. My signal strength's a little sketchy here, so I couldn't hear all of what Brian said. But yeah, there's $1 million that the Concord Municipal Housing Affordable Trust. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Affordable Housing Trust has and is willing to commit to this. So the money is there. It came from the town for free cash transferred for affordable housing. So the question is, there's issues with the agreement and enforceability of the MOU and that sort of thing. But I think it's it's a complicated, but it's a mathematically simple calculation, $36,000 per unit for 83 units versus $150,000 per unit if we built 20 units there. 20 units is what we will need to stay, estimated what could be what we would need to stay in the safe harbor. Right. So if we had $3 million and wanted to put it to a different use, you could build units for 150, you could still stay within safe harbor, but those take time. And so we would be outside of safe harbor for some period of time, which would make us vulnerable to an unfriendly 40B. I'll stop.
Well, the third alternative is a friendly 40B where the developer bears all the costs and we don't spend anything. But
But
Right,
the
right.
decision, right, so the question, I guess for us to figure out, where are we on the question, or what aspect of the question do we want to deal with, right, is whether the town should give Walter Ohanian some more money. So whether we keep going forward with this project or not. My reservation, as I said earlier, is really more about, I don't know what the end cost is.
Right.
And I, not unlike with the middle school, I'd like somebody to maybe come tell me, this is what we think it's actually going to cost us to do it when he puts a shovel in the ground. And I think his estimates were updated fairly recently. I think the 28 million is a recent number. Do you know, Ray, what date that's as of? I think it's recent.
Oh, I think that's a June of 2022.
June, okay, so it's pretty recent, but it could be a year old before he goes in.
Yeah.
So not unlike the middle school,
Right,
we
right.
would load something on that, A, and then B, it would be helpful to know what the odds are of him getting the full 7 million, so that if he's going to come back, and then we can do some math and say, do we
Yes,
think
there's
at
34
price
projects.
it's worth it?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so, but I think the select board is sort of ahead of us here. They
I-
get to make
it's-
the decision,
Yeah.
and then we
Yeah,
would weigh in on what the costs
I think
are.
it's good for us to all understand that there are moving parts here. It's a select board issue, but it may come back to us for our recommendation. Okay, anyone else on this item? Okay. And our next thing is other topics. I was just going to ask if there are any liaison reports that people are dying to bring up.
I'll just
one
bring-
liaison reports, minor, but just an update. I went to the library committee. I think the most significant thing there is that they will be no longer, there's efforts in the works to no longer charge late fees on books at the library. So that's a
Bring up
working
their parking meters.
writ large in the library industry, I'd say but what that does mean, I think there were some numbers put around, the approximation, I think, as I remember it, is a little over 30,000 a year in late fees that actually that are given to the town, and then that goes to free cash. So there is, if that program actually closes, those fees would not necessarily, they wouldn't go to free cash. So just an update. I don't know if that's something that we need to really haggle about as a committee. I think I would say we're probably all in agreement. That's probably a good thing, but that's the update.
Thanks, Brian.
I have a couple of
Dee?
updates.
Yeah.
Okay, Board of Assessors and then also the CPC. I did go over and meet with the new assessor. Her name is Meredith Stone. And this is a year of appraisals around assessments around town for all properties. So you should be receiving your assessment.
Revaluation.
Evaluation, is that what it is?
Revaluation.
Revaluation, okay, your revaluation sometime this month. And it's, and I think her approach is a little bit different from the past, which is asking people if they have questions, if they have concerns about their revaluation, to contact her right away so that they can try to get everything smoothed over before the end of the year. Last year, they had 125 requests for abatement.
So she's new on the job?
She's new on the job.
Evaluation year?
Yes, but she is
Great
very
job, Carrie.
She's very seasoned. One thing she did tell me is in the past, the revaluations were 80 to 90% of the value, what they had come up with, and the state has changed it, and it's now 90 to 110%. So you might see some changes there.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, the
coverage of
the the way that the reevaluation would be based on 80 to 90% of what the value is they came up with.
Okay. I see.
Okay,
Yep, yep.
and that was in the past, and now the new one is 90 to 110%.
So they're going to go up.
Yep, and if the assessments also in this year where prices were significantly higher, it'll be really interesting to see.
Okay,
So that's,
but we all understand
yep,
that if every house goes up to 100% or 90%, the rate
Will
should
drop.
drop. But that is very, very hard to explain to a homeowner. What homeowners want to see is an evaluation that is less than they think they can sell their house for, no matter what.
Harry, what does that
We've been
do?
through this before.
What does this do on the new growth side? So does that change anything for us when we value new growth in the, in the revenue projections? Does that change anything? Not much? No? Okay.
so any other questions on the assessor, Board of Assessors? They usually meet in this room, and it's, a very quick meeting, unlike some others.
We'll see.
So the other topic is the CPC, and in your packet, you also received a list of their applications. And there's one, I have no idea where this is. It's the, it's the Kennedy, something Kennedy Pond.
Oh,
And-
that's up off, it's in West Concord, kind of behind.
Friends of Kennedy Pond, yes, is the applicant. And it's Hillcrest Conservation Trail Repair. I don't know where that one is. Anyway, they have their list. They have 2 people who are working on each one of these applications, who will specialize in the applications. The total estimate is 1.5 million, and I think right now, what they should be getting is about 1.8 million. Maybe, Carrie, you know that? Off the top of your head, Carrie. Gail, do you know that one?
Okay,
Okay.
because I was liaison, I did speak to the staff person. She thought it was about 2 million, so 1.8.
Is that what it's going to be? Okay,
I
all
don't-
right. So they do not have requests that actually exceed the amount of money they have this year. So it'll be interesting. There's also the opportunity that they might be able to be a source of funding for affordable housing. They are a source of funding. They have to have 10%, but if something else might come up, there is a resource there on a special
And most of the
exemption.
applicants are the town, right? So
Yes.
everybody recognizes, right? So
Yes.
this is really used as a way to fund town projects, right?
Yeah, well, it is, but it's not exclusive to
Not
that, because we
exclusively,
do
but-
have nonprofits that
Yeah, we do.
generally submit. I'm surprised there aren't any
Right,
here.
right. I'm surprised
there
that
are
the,
some towns
the
that-
church isn't back. Where's the church?
Well, there are some sometimes, or some
What do you
towns.
call that? The
The-
tavern?
The one over here?
tavern,
Oh,
right-
the
Right
tavern?
Tavern.
Where's that?
Nothing on Right Tavern this year.
There are towns that only give to town projects
Yeah.
with their funding.
No, I'm
And
just-
we are not one
I'm
of them
just
because
pointing
we
it out
have
as
quite a few nonprofits.
Right, I'm just pointing it out as an education point to the new members, right? So
Okay.
we're going to go through the budget. This is a separate part of funding that gets reviewed by a committee where the town is putting some of their capital projects over here because it can be paid for through the
Right.
CPC fund. So
The,
that's one of the things we look at.
Which leverages state money.
yeah.
And town taxes, right?
So
Yeah,
one
we're
of the
town
fun
money,
things,
but-
Yeah.
one of the fun things
Matched.
about this committee is that they go and they visit the sites. That is this Saturday, and it's a blast.
It's a blast.
They're visiting 6 of the sites this Saturday, and they go, and the staff person goes also from the town, and they have a good time. So, and the 2 of us have served on the CPC before, and when you're finished here, when you're out of this, you might want to go over to the CPC. It's a great committee. They will have opportunities, though, they may have opportunities coming up that will be a source for the additional funding that they currently have, because I think last year they spent most of their reserves.
Mhm.
So that's it.
Yeah, I would just like to
Okay, I'm sorry.
ask one question.
Uh-huh.
That our member of the audience might be able to react to. I see the Warner Pond restoration for limited dredging and boat launch access for 550,000.
That's only part of it.
So my understanding is that the town's prepared to spend 2.3 million on that project, and the bid came back at 9 million? Or some such, so.
It came back at 9 million.
So the question, I guess.
Hello,
if
Meadow.
Hello Meadow, exactly. If you're, if you're going on the visit, I guess.
I'm not going on the visit.
Okay, or as a heads up to the select board, that 550, I'm kind of wondering how it fits into, like, is this project gonna happen at all? But this says limited dredging and boat launch access improvements, so I'm assuming that's, at the end of that little dirt road where you.
It is. It is
canoe
the end of
over
the
to
dirt
Scout
road,
Island.
and it is just in that area. It
Okay.
doesn't, it's not to go over to the bathing area or where they were going to have a beach. That has other issues.
Okay.
The
But
thing is, they have not,
if it turns out it is Hello Meadow, if we're gonna,
let it be a
let the
meadow.
water out, just make it a meadow, then you wonder. So
it's not just this money, it would be the money that they have already acquired and not spent
Okay.
that could come back.
And they being the
But
NRC,
it's,
It's
the town.
Delia.
Delia.
Yeah, NRC,
It's-
Natural
yeah.
Resources.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
right.
that's money that could possibly come back in.
All right. Well, let's keep that on the radar screen.
Good. I didn't know about the 9 million. It's just,
Carrie, is the asset bed
You gonna
deal
go, or do you
done?
want a comment?
I have an
Oh, sorry.
update on.
Okay, yes. Dee, are you
Done.
all set? Okay, go ahead.
So, planning board, and just to say that if you recall, the zoning that went down and vote at the town meeting, the zoning change contained several details that apparently the town planner feels could be incorporated town-wide rather than just within that zone. The reduction in green space, for example, and what I think is a rather significant change in the formula we use for the component of affordable housing. And these changes were proposed through conversations with developers who said we'd be more likely to do something in Concord if we didn't have this, if we could essentially build out the full site and not have to allocate for green space, or if we didn't have to provide affordable housing units on a project of up to 9 units. Today, for that project, you'd have to provide 2 of them would have to be affordable. So they also proposing to make it so that a developer can make a payment in lieu of affordable units, which does nothing for us in terms of our ability to actually have the units to meet our requirements. And as we all know, of course, how do you determine what that payment should be? The cost of a unit could be anything from $36,000 to $750,000 in real practice. And yet I can see the planning board is headed down this path of making changes. It was very clear that it wasn't coming from any member of the board, but rather from the town staff. So I just wanted to flag that. Mary Hartman, I see you are dialing in here, and I thought you probably already attended to maybe.
Thank you, Don. I heard it. I heard you. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So anyway, from a just relevant, that particular element was relevant to what our earlier conversation.
Okay, well, if it's a change in zoning, it'll have to be put on the warrant for a
Correct.
town meeting vote. I think that's only, I don't know,
It's a really.
It's only 50% instead of 2/3 now, is that correct? Because of the state zoning change?
For some, I don't know the.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other members? Anyone up there? Greg, Kathy, Ray, Suresh, Ryan, Lois? No. Okay, thank you. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve. Lois, do you want to make the motion for July 21st, 2022 and July 28th, 2022?
So I move that the full committee approve the minutes for those 2 dates that were included in the packet for the meeting.
Second.
Okay, there's a correction on one. So on the 28th, on the second page, it's the second, I guess it's the first new paragraph, it might be the second new paragraph. It starts, Mr. Patel, co-FinCom observer to the building committee. That's Suresh. That's not Mr. Patel.
Okay, then I will amend my motion to ask that the minutes be approved as corrected.
Okay.
So moved. Or
Any further comments? All in favor? I think we have to roll call this because we have people online.
We do, yeah.
Oh boy. Minutes. Look at the roster. All right, Ray Andrews. Aye. Ray?
Thumbs up.
thumbs
Is
up?
that a thumbs up? You can say aye. Ray?
He can't hear
Frozen,
you.
I think.
He can't, and he's frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Okay. Suresh?
Yes.
Me, yes. Peggy Briggs, that is. Greg Gorillo?
Yes.
Armith is not here. Dawn?
Yes.
You're here. Dee?
Yes.
Parashar is absent. Christine?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Lois?
Yes.
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Lindsay?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay.